Oh, look what's finally arrived. Hello and welcome to the Battling Barrow and another terrain build, and this is the potential final part. I may have something in the future I might add to it, but that'll be a really short mini video. But this is the final part of the big ship build. This has been using a TTCombat ship kit, which is awesome for like £28, I think it is. I didn't need to do a lot of work to it to make it look this good, and there's the other two parts have been going over that. This final part, if you've watched those, you know I've been waiting for some bamboo so I can make some sails. Of course, you don't have to do this. These sails in the kit would be perfectly serviceable. I have them here. So this is what they look like when they're built. They're perfectly serviceable as round. You could, they slot together, concertina together like that. So you could, of course, use some filler to round them off, but I wanted to use some bamboo so to make them perfectly round. So that is what I did. The masts that come with it, perfectly serviceable. Just to add to that before we get going. So yes, basically this one is going to be making the masts and the masts and the sails, and just doing a few finishing wee touches. So let's get on with it. So with the ship all assembled and ready to make my own masts, the first thing I'm going to do is assemble the kit masts. Why? Because I'm going to need these to show me how high I need to cut the dowels that we're going to be using to make our own masts. It should be noted you could still use the kit masts and use wood filler like we've done in the previous videos to fill in the gaps and create your own rounded masts. I just decided to go for dowel rods to make mine with. I'm going to start with the front mast, as that is the simplest out of the three. Offer it up to a piece of dowel and mark how long it needs to be. Then I'm going to go over to a mitre and use a hacksaw to get a nice straight cut. So this also has a platform at the top. Now what I'm going to be doing here is using the platform and bits from the kit, and the dowel was slightly too small in diameter really, so I'm going to need to make this fit. The top one's just easy as it has a cap that I can glue into place and use that to glue onto the top, but the middle platform will take a bit of work. So again, I'm just going to mark off where I want the middle platform to be, slide it into place, and yes, it's definitely going to be a bit of a mission to get it to stick there. But I've got an idea. I've done this before on the docks using rope to add a bit of detail to it. So yeah, I'm going to add some string to it. But before I do that, let's glue the top cap to the top platform to let that set and dry it whilst I am working on the roping. Okay, with that drying, I can wrap some rope round, and if I wrap it around enough times, as you can see here, it holds the platform in place. So with a bit of glue there and another load of rope on top, that should be really sturdy. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to use PVA, apply some PVA around the dowel and wrap some rope around it, and also cover the rope in PVA so it hardens nicely. You could, of course, and this is what I'll be doing in the future, add a blob of hot glue just to get the rope initially glued on whilst you wrap it around the PVA, and then a blob of hot glue at the end just to finally hold it in place. So I want the masts to be removable, so in the future I can replace them with unfurled sails. It won't be covered in this video, it's a future project. So I'm going to be attaching them with magnets. Now in the kit form, the masts were attached by this cross section here that something would slot into it, and this is what I'm going to hold my magnet in, but my diameter of my magnet is just slightly too big for it, so I'm just going to use a file and file it away to make sure I can get my magnet in there. What I have also done is drilled a hole in the bottom of the dowel and affixed a magnet in there. Not glued it yet, I'll do that a bit later on. Next, I just need something to attach the magnet with, so putting it into the magnet that's in the dowel, just so I get the polarity right. I'm just going to glue it onto a bit of scrap like so, let the glue dry, and in a minute I'll try and pull that magnet out and then glue it in properly into the dowel so it's all nice and firmly in place. Now the glue has dried around the rope, I can come back to that, add a bead of hot glue around the top part of the rope, slide the platform into place and let that set. I will then repeat the process of the rope around the top part of the platform. Next, it's just going to be fixing the top platform to the top of the mast, just with hot glue for this, speed and convenience. With that all assembled and the magnets in place, I can do a strength test. And yeah, it sort of works, but how would it work with a model? And here's why I need Hugo to volunteer. A very dangerous job here for him. Just pop him on the platform and see how it feels. And yeah, it feels sturdy, but I feel I can make some improvements, which I'll come back to later on to just improve the stability of this mast. You don't want to damage your models after all. Now it's just on to the other masts. So here I needed to, the back mast, which I'm working on now, has a hole that the dowel fits into, but that means I need to make the bit of scrap that I glue my magnet onto just slightly further down. So this is what I'm doing here, just making a jig, just to same process as last time. I'm going to glue the magnet in, but hopefully you'll see in a minute what I mean. So it goes in the back in the lighting compartment. So yeah, if I put it flush, the magnet would sit in the hole itself and the mast would then just sit on top of the hole. So I need it to sink in a little bit, just so the mast can fit into that hole. So that's what this is all about here. That's why I've added some extra bits to the scrap, just so the magnet is lower down. I should point out the magnets are the same thickness as the actual MDF kit, which comes in handy. The middle mast is the most complicated one out of all of them, so but it has a cross-section hole again that the kit mast would just slot into. So what I want to do is do something like the back mast, where I want to thread all my dowel into it to hold it in place better. So I'm just going to use a file and make the hole bigger. I had placed the dowel onto this and draw around it just to give me a rough idea of how much I need to file off, and I'm checking it constantly just to make sure I don't make a mistake. And with that done, the dowel fits in lovely, and this actually is probably the strongest one, which it needs to be because it's the biggest mast. And just making a little bit to hold the magnet in place out of scrap MDF, much the same as I did with the back mast. Now I can go work on strengthening and supporting the other two masts. For this, I'm just going to draw around where they would be. It's very important for this back one because it's angled because the floor slopes upwards. So I can't make this totally straight, I have to follow the line of the floor. And what I'm going to do is add some rope around the bottom, much like for holding the platforms in, just to give it that extra little bit of stability. And with that in place, it is much more stable. I can put it in, give it a knock, and it hardly moves now, which is great if you're going to have your models on these platforms. Okay, I'm going to make the sails now. This is the I'm still using the bits from the kit as such, but I'm not using the crossbeam. I'm only going to use the platforms. For the crossbeam for these masts I'm making, I'm going to use some more dowel, but of a much thinner variety diameter. I will be using this platform though, so I will have to make adjustments to this because I don't need those long bits here. I can cut them down. So yeah, this is the dowel I shall be using, and the first thing I am going to do is just measure the width. Once I've got that measured out and cut, I can come in with a file and file into the main vertical mast of where I want the beam to rest, and this will allow it to be sort of held in place better. The sails are made from kitchen roll that I folded into thirds. I tried quarters, but I just needed a bit more material, which folding into thirds gave me. And all I am going to do is, once it's folded into thirds, I'm going to come in with a hot glue gun and put 4 blobs on, 2 on each end and 1 about 1.25 inches from that end, just to hold it in place. Once that's held in place, come in with some watered down PVA and apply it all over the tissue paper, saturated it in this sort of sticky liquid. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mould that into the folded sails using the kit part as a guide, just to get that sag in between the sails. Now in between, where it's going to be held in place with rope, so that is, once I've got that shaped, I can come in with some a little small length of rope, wrap that round using hot glue and hold it in place. One thing you should note is where this is still wet, the initial hot glue kind of cools down really quick, so you have to get it attached quite fast. With all 4 pieces of rope wrapped around it, I can then come in for more hot glue to attach it to the main mast post. And then I will use some more string to wrap around the sail itself and the main mast, going around it each sort of way. And this will not only be decorative, but this will act as holding it and strengthen it in place. Once that's done, I can work on the platforms. Now I don't need these cross beams anymore, so I can just remove them with a sharp standing knife. The MDF cuts really well, so I shouldn't have too much problems here. With that done, I can, this is the main middle mast, so I can just do what I've done before, measure out where I need the platforms to be, file them and glue them and rope them in place. On to the crow's nest. This would have a slot that would be used to hold it into the kit part, but I don't need this anymore, so I'm just going to fill it in with some wood filler, and then I'm going to assemble the crow's nest as per the instructions. Now when that's done, I can glue this into place. I wish I'd magnetised the crow's nest into the top of the mast for when I get round to making the unfolded sails. I could have just popped the crow's nest off and put it onto the unfolded sails. Now I need to get hold of another crow's nest. Now I'm going to do the front sails. I don't know what these are called. These are what go from one of the masts on a sort of different rotation to the main sails. I'm not a sailor obviously, so if you know what these are called, let me know in the comments. I'm just going to call them the front sails for now. So I'm going to assemble them as normal by gluing them together, but what I am going to do is cover them in tissue paper to make them look more like material. So I'm just going to wrap them round, making sure the sort of clip holes there are exposed, and then cover it with PVA to hold it in place and watered down PVA on the outside to give it a bit of material-esque texture. With everything built, I can get on to painting it. Now, I said the masts are going to be removable, which they are, but the front mast the front sail we've just made doesn't get permanently attached in. I'll glue the clips that hold it to the I don't know where the figurehead would be, these bits here, but that's it, so I can remove it and clip it into place as needed. This is also good for storage. You won't have all these sails sticking up all over the place. But with it all done, it's on to painting. I'm not going to worry about painting the rope because that's the right colour I want it, but the wooden parts of it are just going to be painted in the same way I painted the dark wood of the main ship, which is just a burnt umber, slightly watered down to show the wood grain through. Now the sails, I tried to make them look give them a bit of detail, a bit of texture, a bit of wear, a bit of weathering. So I'm using this watered down sepia, and I have to admit, I'm not wholly convinced by this. So at some point in the future, I might come back and repaint the actual sail material. Let me know what colour you'd paint them or how you'd do the sails below if you have any ideas about it. Next, I'm just going to glue these winch pieces in from the kit that I've painted up as well. These will also are great to give that main sail an extra bit of stability. So last video I talked about painting the mermaid and asked for what people would like to see, keep it wood or have it some garish colours, and the general consensus was garish colours. So that's what I'm going to do now. I am going to paint the fish tail a hawk turquoise type blue. The flesh gets painted dwarven flesh, and the hair gets painted spear staff brown. With everything dry, the fish part gets a wash of blue ink, and the hair and skin gets a Reichland flesh shade wash. Next, and this is entirely optional because the cargo bay doors are nice and detailed, you just paint them up and add a few bits of carding to bring out the detail. But I wanted to have more of a grate-like doorway, so that's what I'm doing here, using this, I guess people refer to this as granny grating, but I think it's like for crochet or something. So I'm just measuring it out. So I'm going to cut that out and then use that to trace around some cereal box cards, where I'm just going to sort of freehand work out where I want the sort of planking to go on this contraption. With that done, I'm just going to add some texture in, some sort of scoring, some wood grain effect texture, and then that gets cut out and glued into place. This will get painted the same way as the wood on the rest of the ship. And finally, I am just going to come in with this old water effects that is sort of older than YouTube, I believe. YouTube itself, I've had this since the early 2000s, but it's great. I'm just going to apply it with an old brush, and it dries clear, and it will just look like wave ripples around the side of the boat. So that, once this dries, that is it. So we can have a look at it in a moment in a bit of a grand reveal. Before then, just like to take the time to thank you all for watching and subscribing and liking and commenting. It means a lot. Thank you to the awesome patrons who make this possible, so I can do projects like this without having to beg my wife for some pocket money. And yeah, in a minute we'll have a look at it. I've got another TTCombat video planned of what I can do with the kits. I mean, this was fairly straightforward because it's wood, making wood look like wood. But what about making wood look like stone? That'll be in a future video. Yep, thanks for watching, guys. Until the next one, stay safe, take care, bye bye.